Harris turned the key over in his hand, the cold metal pressing into his palm. The words on the tag, Basement 5, seemed to vibrate in his head. He'd been in every basement of the building, or so he thought. The official plans only listed 4. There was no Basement 5 on any blueprint. He looked around the locker room. Empty. Silent except for the hum of the overhead light. He slipped the key into his pocket and closed his locker slowly, scanning the shadows. That night, he didn't go home. Instead, he stayed late, pretending to fix a loose door hinge on the 3rd floor. Ethan, the night guard, made his usual rounds and left Harris alone, just the way he wanted. When the clock struck midnight, Harris moved. The freight elevator was the only one that went below ground level. He swiped his access card, pressed B4, and waited. The lift groaned to life. As the doors began to close, Harris hesitated. There was no button for B5. The only way to get there would be somewhere else. On B4, the air was colder. The faint smell of bleach and metal hung in the air. Storage rooms lined both sides of the dim hallway, their doors locked. Harris walked slowly, running his hand along the wall, until he felt something strange, a gap in the concrete, almost like a hidden seam. Kneeling down, he pressed. The panel shifted inward, revealing a narrow, unlit staircase that spiraled down. And there, at the bottom step, was a small steel door with no handle, only a keyhole. Harris's fingers trembled as he slid the Basement 5 key in. It turned with a heavy click. The door swung inward with surprising ease. A rush of air escaped, stale, recycled, almost suffocating. The hallway beyond was lined with flickering fluorescent lights. The floor tiles were spotless, too clean for a place supposedly forgotten. He stepped inside, and the door closed behind him. No latch. No knob on this side. The first room Harris entered was filled with filing cabinets, each marked with cryptic codes instead of names. On one desk lay an open folder. Blueprints of the building, but not the same ones he'd studied before. This set showed a vast network of underground spaces beneath the tower, complete with rooms labeled Testing Facility, Archive 9, and one ominously marked Containment. Before he could flip the page, a voice echoed down the hallway. "Keep moving. You're not supposed to stop here." Harris turned. A man in a white lab coat stood at the far end, half hidden by the light. His ID badge was turned backward, name obscured. "What is this place?" Harris asked. The man didn't answer. Instead, he gestured down the corridor. "If you've made it this far, you're either in the way or you've been invited." The deeper Harris walked, the stranger it became. One room was filled wall-to-wall with servers, their green lights blinking in rhythm like a heartbeat. Another had rows of sealed crates stamped with the words "Property of Granton Enterprises. Do not open." In the farthest room, he found something that stopped him cold. A large, circular chamber with a single desk in the center. On it, under a glass dome, sat a stack of photographs, all of him. Cleaning the lobby, fixing the elevator, talking to Ethan, even sleeping in the break room during long shifts. They'd been watching him for years. "Why me?" Harris whispered. The man in the lab coat stepped inside. "Because you were never just a janitor here. You were part of the plan before you even knew there was a plan." Harris shook his head. "No. I was hired 10 years ago. I clean floors. That's it." The man's eyes were cold. 10 years ago, there was an incident in this building. We erased it from public record. Everyone who knew was removed. Except you. You stayed. We needed someone in plain sight, someone no one would suspect, someone who could go everywhere. Harris took a step back. "You've got the wrong guy." The man's tone hardened. "No, Harris. You've been the right guy all along. And now, the real work begins." Suddenly, the lights cut out. Only the emergency glow remained, painting the walls in red. Somewhere down the corridor, heavy doors slammed. Footsteps echoed, more than one set, moving fast. Harris's instincts kicked in. He ducked into a side room, closing the door quietly. From the darkness, he felt along the wall until he found what he hoped was another exit. Instead, his fingers brushed against something cold, a bank of switches labeled with floor numbers, including B5. But below that was something else, B6. He hesitated only a moment before flipping the B5 switch down. Somewhere above, machinery roared. The floor trembled. The hidden door he'd entered through hissed open again. Harris bolted for it, sprinting up the narrow staircase, his breath ragged. When he emerged back onto B4, he didn't look back. He ran straight to the freight elevator and rode it to the ground floor. Ethan was waiting at the security desk, startled to see him. "You're pale as a ghost," Ethan said. "Where have you been?" Harris forced a smile. "Just doing my job." He didn't tell Ethan about the photographs, or the blueprints, or the fact that somewhere beneath their feet was a basement 6. That night, Harris sat at his kitchen table, the key to basement 5 still in his pocket. He knew they would come for it, and maybe for him. But he also knew something else. He wasn't done. The man in the lab coat had been right about one thing. Harris was in the right place. And now he knew where to start looking. Because some floors are built for business. Some are built for show. Surrounded by blueprints, crates, and surveillance photos of himself. It'll match your earlier scenes perfectly. Would you like me to? Harris stared at the small, tarnished key in his palm. It felt heavier than it should, the metal warm as though it had been waiting for him. Basement 5. The building schematics he'd studied for weeks only showed 4 basement levels. Whatever this key opened officially didn't exist. He glanced at the security cameras above his locker. They weren't pointing at him, at least not tonight. Slipping the key into his pocket, he finished his shift like nothing was different. But inside, his mind was a storm. That night, Harris didn't go home. Instead, he waited until the last employee left, the hum of the building settling into an unnatural quiet. The lobby's polished floors reflected the dim emergency lights. His footsteps echoed, slow and deliberate, as he made his way to the elevator. The button for basement 4 lit up when pressed. But basement 5, there was no button. He inserted the key into a small, almost invisible slot beneath the control panel, a slot he had never noticed before. With a soft click, the panel lit up with a new button, B5. The elevator shuddered as it descended. The ride was longer than any he'd taken in the building before. When the doors finally opened, Harris stepped into a hallway lined with thick, soundproof walls. The air was cold, not the natural chill of an underground floor, but manufactured, controlled. There were no windows, no signs, no office numbers. He walked cautiously, his boots thudding on the smooth concrete. Then he heard it, the faint hum of machinery. Following the sound, he found a heavy steel door at the end of the hall, a biometric scanner beside it. The key didn't fit here. Before he could turn back, a voice echoed from behind him. "You weren't supposed to find this." Harris turned slowly. Standing in the hallway was the same older man from the second floor, the one who had spoken about the building's mask. Only this time, he wasn't alone. 2 men in black suits flanked him, their faces expressionless. "You're making a mistake," Harris said, keeping his voice steady. "I've seen mistakes," the man replied. "This is prevention." The suited men stepped forward, but Harris quickly raised his hands. "I'm not here to destroy anything," he said. "I just want to know what this place is." The older man studied him for a moment, then waved the others back. "You've been useful before," he said. "Perhaps you can be useful again." The steel door hissed open, revealing a massive underground chamber. Rows of servers stretched into the darkness, blinking lights casting eerie glows on the walls. But this wasn't just data storage. Along the far wall were shelves lined with thick black binders, each labeled only with dates. And in the center of the room, a glass-walled archive. Inside the archive, Harris saw boxes stacked to the ceiling. Some were labeled with department names that hadn't existed for decades. Others bore symbols and codes he didn't recognize. "This," the older man said, "is where the real history of Granton Enterprises lives. The kind of history you don't release to the public unless you want the city to burn." Harris stepped closer to the glass, his breath fogging it slightly. He spotted files with familiar dates, ones matching the old safety violation reports he had already exposed. If these records were released, they could reveal every hidden scandal the company had buried over the last 50 years. Why keep this? Harris asked. Why not destroy it? The older man's expression didn't change. Because information is more powerful when it's controlled. If you destroy it, you lose leverage. If you keep it, you can decide when and to whom the truth matters. Harris understood now. This wasn't about protecting the building. It was about protecting power. They gave him a choice. He could leave, forget what he saw, and keep his comfortable advisory role. Or he could join them, becoming a silent custodian of the company's deepest secrets. Harris didn't answer right away. He asked for a moment to look around. The older man allowed it, the guards watching from a distance. Harris walked the rows, scanning labels, mentally noting anything he could. Then he stopped at a box labeled simply, Project Fortress. It was sealed heavier than it looked. Something inside shifted when he touched it. The older man called out, "Time's up." Harris turned, and in that moment, he made his choice. He grabbed the box, swinging it into the glass archive door. The tempered glass cracked but didn't shatter. Sirens blared instantly, red lights flooding the chamber. The guards lunged forward, but Harris wasn't trying to run. Instead, he slammed the box again, this time breaking the lock on the glass door. Dozens of files tumbled out. And that's when Ethan appeared. Harris had tipped him off earlier that day with a single cryptic text, "If I'm not back by midnight, follow the hum." Ethan burst into the chamber, camera already rolling. The older man's face twisted into rage. "You have no idea what you're doing," he shouted. "Oh, I think we do," Harris said, shoving a stack of files into Ethan's hands. "Take it to the press. All of it." The guards tried to block the exit, but Ethan darted past, the files clutched tight. Harris stood his ground, blocking the suits from chasing him. "You think this will destroy us?" the older man said, stepping closer. Harris leaned in just enough to answer, "No. But it'll make sure you never bury the truth again." Minutes later, Harris was escorted out of the building, not gently. By the time he reached the street, police sirens were wailing in the distance. Not for him, but for the men inside. Ethan's footage had already gone live. By morning, every major news outlet in the city was running the story. Granton Enterprises' name was everywhere, alongside decades of cover-ups, safety violations, and shady dealings. The board moved quickly, removing the remaining executives. Federal investigators locked down Basement 5, sealing it for good. Harris didn't get his job back, but he didn't need it. The public saw him as the man who exposed the truth, twice. Neighborhood kids waved when they saw him on the street. People bought him coffee just to say thank you. One evening, as the sun set over the city, Harris sat on a bench, watching life go on. Ethan joined him, holding 2 cups. "You ever think about what else might be buried out there?" Ethan asked. Harris smiled faintly. "Every day. But now, at least I know where to look." Some truths had been buried under concrete and lies for decades. But as Harris knew all too well, it only takes one person willing to descend into the dark to bring them into the light. And for now, that was enough. Subscribe to my channel for more chilling and intriguing stories.